seen that with families somehow. It's even sort of like breaking families apart, because then you'd have like families where, this family's sort of like, more like this is the breadwinner of the family, and then before you'd have like a breadwinner, they'll sort of like sort themselves out and then like be able to like sort other people. Eventually they would make it and then like, return that favor. So it's like, it's a trend, it continues. However, now due to the fact that things are being more expensive, everyone's finding themselves in like the same bucket. It's like crabs in the same bucket. However, like some people like are able to climb out of that, and some it just gets to a point where they just fall back in. It's because of things that are tight around them. So I feel like maybe these are all factors that could also lead to things getting more, like people reacting in a certain type of way, because things are getting more hard, you know what I mean?
It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's a circumstantial thing on one end.
Exactly, circumstances.
And I guess lifestyle would also contribute, because if you're used to a certain lifestyle, you're used to a certain lifestyle, and if things start going up, you start realizing like, oh shit, I can't give as much anymore, because you feel like if I give, then that's taken out of my pocket.
Because you're experiencing lifestyle creep without your lifestyle changing.
Exactly.
Like you're all of a sudden spending more, but you're living the same. Yeah, and there's less to go around. And regarding the, what's it called? The thing about things not being objective, I feel as though like there are certain things that are measurable, and I think with poverty you can measure it like numerically, and numbers are objective. But when it comes to like feelings, how I feel about myself, my position in society, the dynamics that I'm exposed to, because I feel like it was linked to feminism in the very beginning when you said it. So that is very much subjective. Like I can't tell a woman what her experience is.
Right.
And similarly, a woman doesn't know what my perspective is fully. And at the same time, but I feel like there's an extra layer to that, where women are usually more aware of society in general, in the sense that women raise the children. Typically, if you're looking they are the emotional support, they're the person people talk to, they have a greater level of awareness than we do. They can speak on us in ways that we can't speak on them, and that's just the case. And
what do you mean by that?
Because I don't know how to put it, like in a sense that I think even in general, the way guys, we deal with our problems and we go about it, a lot of us don't even go to our friends who we talk to and stuff like that. A lot of people's emotional support comes from their mom, or like a girlfriend, or someone, a wife, that's your confidant. And they have a awareness of like what's going on in a deeper level than a lot of us do. Because us, and I can't really generalize, because people are different, and it's what I'm saying about it being, everything being subjective. It's hard to be objective about anything at the moment. Maybe like 60 years ago, I could feel like I had some objective understanding of the world and be like, this is how families are, this is how men are, this is how women are. But what it means to be a man and what it means to a woman has evolved in society numerous times.
We don't even need to.
Like, just in the most simple thing about just the baby, a male child being given blue as a color, and a female child being given pink, it was changed. It was different before. Like in the 1800s, I believe it was pink for a boy, blue for a woman. It just changed. Things just evolve and change. They're like, there's no objective truth in that sense. But I just feel like, just based on my understanding and my experience, it's just that they have some great level of awareness, and that's why I'm just, regarding the feminism aspect, it's very difficult for me to like project what my feelings are about that to it. I feel like that one is very much left to the lived experiences of women, because historically women have been silenced. If you look at authors in the past, women weren't allowed to write books. There's so much that's been done to understand men and cater to men that has not even half been done about women. J.K. Rowling, for example, why she used that name for the Harry Potter books is because so that people wouldn't think that she's a woman, so that they'll buy the book. And these are the different ways that women have been marginalized by society. And we have literally not spent time to like fully understand them. Like even from a point where we can even have so much data that we can sort of like say, okay, like I understand this much. Like there's been books written about men, songs written about war heroes and this and the other, and women have somewhat been in the dark. And that's why I said they can speak on us more than we can speak on them. They have been silenced for too long. We don't know their perspective. You can only speak on the experience of someone else when you know what their perspective is about that experience. You can add on maybe your perspective of what you've witnessed about that or seen about that experience, and then sort of make a judgment. we don't have that much information. That's why I feel like when it comes to just feminism and dynamics of women in society, it's very important for us as men to very open to what their experience is, and just like be like, okay, man, I'm not God. I don't know everything. I don't know what you've lived. When we were younger, just based on the patriarchal society we live in, we could go play ball all day. Our sisters, our cousins, they're in the house. We don't know what's really, really going on. We don't know what kind of responsibilities they've been given that we haven't been given. We don't know what kind of traumas and different things that they've gone through that we haven't gone through. Because we could go play football. Our memory of our childhood, I was playing football here, I was camping here. Don't you see what I'm talking about? Giant fair, I do this, do that. Like, you know? It's all these different things that I'm out doing. Whereas who is actually usually kept at home? Young girls, they would gain out. They can be neighborhood. And we're just out. So it's very difficult. Whereas yeah, I feel like just on that point about like feminism. So that's why I went about subjectivity, because I can't have an objective view of that experience.
Yeah, I can understand how something like that would be can be very oppressing to women. But I'm also, sometimes I just like to usually take it back, because there's not to deny what they're going through, their reality, right? Sometimes men take all the smoke. Most of the time men take all the smoke, right? Sometimes some men have nothing really to do with it. They're having their own struggles, right? Yeah. It's not like all men are just out here doing God knows what to their woman. The majority of men are just trying to make ends meet, right? Especially in the Gambian society that we're in. And from the perspective of these people, from my understanding, because I kind of, I grew up on that, understand what some men are going through to really take care of their families at home. Men are not going out there and making money and be like, I'm going to make money so I can oppress my woman, right? They're out there saying, I'm going to make money to take care of my family. Yeah. And that's a very genuine intention that they have. Yeah. It's not like they're trying to make money to oppress women, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we understand how tough the world is. We understand how unsafe the world can be, especially for women. And I think at some point, we had certain rules for women that we didn't have for men, and I think it was for good intentions, right? Trying to protect women, because usually a woman out in the wilderness is more at risk than a guy, because a guy, physical differences, we can protect ourselves. At least we have a fighting chance.
But who are we protecting them from?
Men, other men.
Okay, no. But I think
I was coming there, and what we understand how dangerous other men can be, exactly. And this is why we have the army, you have the police. Who do we have these things for? It's not for women, right? Because majority of people that are trying to take your land, that are trying to kill you, that are trying to enslave you, they are men, right? So we have these things for men. We're not having these things to oppress women. We're trying to both protect other men that has nothing to do with these things and other women.
We can't separate. Like security and police, they protect society. Everyone.
And my point is, if you dive a little bit deep into it, yes, we understand they're protecting society, but society is occupied by human beings, right? By men and women. So if we come down to basic level, we are trying to protect people from other men most of the time, because the majority of inmates are male.
Yeah, but there's a huge female prison population. I think during TRC that's something that they touch on.
If you compare male to female,
no, of course it's the world. Yeah, but it is, and that's true, and I'm not even gonna sort of that's that aspect, but I think with men and women, it can't always be this big separation. We're talking about things like police and all that stuff, because this is the entirety of society. And the concept isn't just to protect men from women. And historically, there have been women that have, led sieges, that have led rebellions. If you look at a state separatist as an army and a police, in that context, they'll be trying to stop the woman, So it's difficult to say man, woman. I think it's just society when it comes to that aspect.
Again, but, the reason why I'm saying this is, we are currently in this kind of society where it's being separated. It's men and women. Usually, a lot of women, understandably so, blame men for the things that they're going through, because it's usually that that has done these things to these people. But I feel like it has gotten to a point where it's not really helping anymore. What it's really doing is just creating a rift between men and women, because we're now seeing each other as me against you, right? Yeah. Because traditionally, like he was saying, men are the ones that are going through all the outside, physical jobs to provide for their women, and that's a different reality. And we have to be realistic. This is a tough reality. Definitely. Not to underplay their roles at home. We understand that's a tough reality, but me and you can't really relate, and it's appreciated because. If you ask me, a lot of me and you and him, if we have issues, it's usually a woman that we go and talk to, either our moms or wives. So we do understand that they are really the pillars of society, right? And that is not to downplay it in any shape or form. But what I'm trying to say, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if we are in a society where now we're being pitted against each other, it's really difficult to get down to just fundamentals, right? And society has evolved, so our views on certain laws that we had. But to go back to where they started, I think there's a lot of good intentions behind them. And what I usually try to do is, instead of just saying society has always been oppressive to women, right? Let's just try to understand why we had these things in place. And this is not to say whatever you're going through now, it's not really a big deal, right? But it's just to go back to where these things originated from, not to paint history as this evil, male-dominated, just oppressing woman, right? There's a lot of that, not to really take away from that, but we had certain things in place just to protect the vulnerable, right? And at certain time in certain societies, the most vulnerable people were women and kids.
Yeah, and the vulnerable are being protected from men, and I think that's the big point, though.
Yeah,
it's not that we can't say that majority of men have good intention, but also majority of men are protecting women from men. It's a difficult position to be in. That's why I can't say majority, because it's going to one side that we can't objectively say that there's a perception, and which is why with the subjectivity is that's how you view it.
Right.
But for me, I just feel like I can't lean on that, because in some aspects, I'll just say, it's some men decide are there to protect women. Some men are great people.
Right.
Some men aren't good people. They're horrible people. That exists within society. But when you're talking about how men are exposed to these outside forces, in society, a man, in the patriarchal societies that we live in, at least this one specifically, a man is put above a woman. So if a man is experiencing X, Y, and Z outside, what is the woman experiencing when she goes outside? Because she doesn't completely stay home. Is she experiencing a harder experience than him, or easier one?
Outside?
The outside. And in the house as well, if I as a man is marginalized in some way, I don't have resources, I don't have that experience is felt much harder by the wife and the kids. As you mentioned, vulnerable, but they're the ones that are under you. Right. So if whatever you're experiencing, they're experiencing a much harder reality.
If they are there.
Yeah. No, even wherever they may be, even in your house. Because if they're not going out there whatsoever, then that means that whatever you're experiencing out there, it's not like you can come inside and bring like better than that. If you're not earning enough money, you can't bring more money than you earn at home.
Exactly.
If your experience out there, and even with GBV, and I feel like with that particular conversation, there should be some, people who are like, that's their field to talk about, because it's like a really sensitive topic.
It is.
But like, for me, with a lot of people that experience hardship outside, they come and they take it out on their family a lot. It happens a lot. It's not all people, it's some people. And I think it's always good to be specific, but like, the experience of women...
See, that's my point. Yeah. That's my point right there. I like when things are just specific. Yeah. Like, you just specify. Because it becomes very problematic if you start to generalize. And this is my whole thing, right? When I'm talking to someone, right, I want you to be very specific, because if you generalize, what I try to do is I try to tell you, okay, there's a lot of things that are involved. You can't just generalize something and make a blanket statement. You really have to go deep into it and try to talk about it. And I'm open, with conversations like that. I'm open, and I'm ready to change my perception on things. From your point of view.
But I like to ask you this though. I think the the other aspect of this, and which is why I'm really with you on this, because like as far as how things are put out there, I think the specificity is necessary, and at the same time we have a issue coming up in the world at the moment with these young boys, you know, ingesting this red pill culture and like this manosphere thing where they're like sort of hating women, all these different things,
Right.
and that is almost that's a result to a certain degree of young men feeling marginalized by society. You know, you fall into these sort of cults, these little groups, because you feel like you've been rejected by society. If you're ostracized to some level and you don't feel like you're being reflected or accepted, I don't even know how to put it, but you then fall into these different things where you then hate the world for not loving you.
Right.
And there's a lot of that going on. And I feel like, you know, society has gone in two ways. There was a time where, you know, women were more oppressed than they are now. And it was like brutal oppression, everything. And it's come to a point where over the last decade, women have felt a lot more
free
and confident to speak out.
Yeah.
And in some aspects on social media, that has gone to a certain extreme, whereas like some people are completely like, you know, they just hate all men. They, you know what? Not even. I wouldn't even put that in that way. There's some people have gone to the other extreme. Some where it's like if you go to a certain side of it, it's like just if as a young man I'm reading that, it doesn't read well to me, and it doesn't necessarily motivate me to be better. It puts me on the defensive, and at the same time, I think we have to sort of correct ourselves in some sense in that way, where we just have a balanced view where us as men we very much need to accept our role in a lot of shit in the world.
Yeah, but
And we need to take accountability.
Yeah.
We need to accept that. We need to also understand contextually the world that we live in and the position it puts us.
Yeah.
We can't say that if you look at different hierarchies, class, race, different aspects or different categories, there's whatever at the bottom is, then there's a man, there's a woman. If you look at the racial hierarchy, I don't know what text it was, I forgot, I did it in uni, but like there was a racial hierarchy where black people were at the bottom. Who do you think is the very, very bottom of that? Black women. As far as how the world treats and receives them.
All right.
And I can't just get in my feelings, because when we're talking about objectivity, and say that I'm a man, I go through this, I go through that, I go through that, how can you think that my life is easy? Easy is subjective. You know? Easy is a relative thing. Like, I can play legendary mode on FIFA and it can feel easy to me. Doesn't make it easy.
But then I feel like it would just come down to perspective as well in a way.
It's all about perspective.
Yeah, because just to add to what you said, like...
Yeah, I am interested on your take on this, because you are coming from a very...
broad.
Yeah, like also a very modern way of seeing things and analyzing things, which is how society should be anyway. Like, we need to be able to have dialogues on these issues. And the reason why I also want to hear your perspective is because I feel like sometimes from the conversation we've had so far, it's Jagne from a traditional upbringing, right? Where logis moy dad bi mo de job, understand nga? Mo ñu kër asibaha bi mairie distribute ko, make sure everyone is fed,
So
understand nga? Everyone is being provided for. So what's your take on what we're talking about now?
Yeah, I feel like, you know, that would just all come down to perspective, because like you said, like coming from that background where, you know, I've seen this growing up, or like I've seen that, okay, this is sort of like a system where, you know, if this is like sort of like portrayed this way, this and this is how it sort of happens. But then again, looking at like society right now, where it's like, you know, like you said, there's like people with dual incomes now, or certain ways where even the woman is the breadwinner of the family, or the woman is the highest earner, or like we have single mothers now, do you know what I'm trying to say? So it's like, then things change, because now with all of these different things put into place, we're now seeing how, like, what's coming out of it now. So how is that, like, you know, like, let's say with the dual income and whatever, how are they be able to sort of like harness that in order to sort of apply it and see like how, when it's applied as well, how that's been able to sort of like affect the family or affect like society in general.
How's the dynamic going to look like?
Yeah, how
now?
the dynamic's going to look like. So for me, I just feel like, you know, it just comes down to perspective, and also just realizing the world is here for both men and women, you know, because either way, like, even though we say, okay, like from history or whatever, like, you know, this is how things were, this is how things used to be or whatever, but then looking at things now, because we have to also understand that change is the most constant thing in life. So the more we grow, the more we're changing in terms of generations and like people or whatever. Now we're even seeing women like in positions where we're used to seeing men in, based on history or whatever. Or like, you know, like women also like excelling in certain areas where, you know, like we're also seeing like a balance now. So it's not always only about men anymore. Like it's not only about women anymore, but we have like, you know, competition or like a different balance or different flow. So I would just say that just comes down to perspective in terms of how the people think. Because let's say you can come from a traditional background or traditional family, and then based on how you were raised or how you see things being done in your household, that would sort of affect your perspective in life in terms of how you view the world or how you see things. Also coming from like a family where, you know, you have like two sort of like breadwinners, or like the mother and father or both bringing food to the table, you're also getting used to a certain system, a different system now, and that's also going to affect your outlook in life. So somehow our perspectives as well, plus how society influences us, I think like all of that put together with like just the world in general in life, going through life, what we learn, and just how we just grow up or how we just nurtured, these are all like different elements that affect our lifestyles or affect like society or even things around us in a way. Because that applies to me, and then I would just sort of like go with this sort of like structure and go through it in life. But then for me doing that, it's also affecting people around me. Whether it's because maybe they're not like used to the same way I'm doing things, or they're not sort of subjected to sort of like do the same things I do, so they're getting affected by it in a way. So coming back to like, you know, the feminism topic, whereas like, you know, we have men and women both in like situations where, you know, there's imbalances, or like, you know, there's women thinking they also like need to be in the conversation and vice versa. I feel like we've gotten there in terms of society, in terms of like the generation, the way the world is right now. So in terms of how do we accept it, or how do we sort of like move with that? Because giving women also the opportunity, we're also seeing like, you know, the benefits of that as well. Because the woman is the first teacher of the child in a way, because we all came from a woman. You know, like that's like the traditional side of things. But then nowadays, like, you know, we seeing different things in terms of science and technology, like, you know, crazy things happening in it. But if we go back to the traditional, if we go back to, I wouldn't even just say traditional, but just how even what science proves or whatever, like in terms of how things started in it, like you can always relate that back to this is how things were started, or this is how, you know, we expect things to be like. But then depending on how people are, how they move or how they behave, everyone has their own way of doing things in a way in it. So it can just be, so for my take in it, I'll just say it's all about perspective. I can't say like, I wouldn't say it's okay, it's because of this and this and that, or it's because of that and that, because based on that, it can affect people in different ways. And then from that as well, because somehow, like, I think you mentioned about, you know, certain people, like nowadays we have people like, you know, like doing like all of these cult followings and this and that or whatever. And that's, let's say, we can always look at it like the minority being looked at like sort of like, no, in a way where just because the minority are doing that, it doesn't mean that that's what everyone else is doing. You know what I'm saying? It's all our perspective. But then again, it can be in everyone's face in a way where you'd think, wow, this is how things are. But then again, it's always a bigger picture.
It's something that in general with society, a lot that we very much take in the negative, and it has a lasting impression on us more than the positive. Because as well as like you mentioned this earlier outside, we're talking about all the difficulty that we face in the country and everything that's happening, and there's also another perspective where it's like, what are we grateful for? What do we have that what brings us here every year?
Facts.
Why can't we can go if we want the sun, beach, and something cheap, whatever? Why don't we go to Indonesia, Malaysia, like Spain? Why do we come back here? I know we're from here.
This is home.
It's home. But there's a certain quality that this place has that everyone sees it. We're called the Smiling Coast for a reason.
Facts.
If you see the Chinese map of Africa, they have like a writing for every country about what they know the country for. And for us, it's awesome people, is what they said. I'm not taking it as like the objective, like whatever, but like it's, you know, we have brilliant people, we have a sense of community, and we're not too big. You know, we have so many different things that we can actually lean on. we have very intelligent people. Like, bro, like I've spoken to so many different types of people. Like Gambians never fail to like impress me.
100%.
In so many different ways.
100%.
And I feel like this is why we need to look at, like investing in our people. And I just don't mean money. I mean investing in our people in time, in conversation, in advice, whatever it may be. We need to invest in each other, both men and women, to make sure that all of us are able to have freedom in how we approach the world, be able to make choices and have options. And I think ultimately, that's where it all should be. Every Gambian, whoever you may be, wherever you may come from, whatever your perspective may be, you need to have similar opportunities, similar access. You need to have certain concessions that should be a standard.
Exactly.
And going back to that clip, and exactly what you're saying outside, because you brought the clip up because you're watching it today, and it really like it provoked thoughts in you that were I feel like were like really important. Was that the people in power need to put more energy into this. They need to work harder to think about the needs of the Gambians who have the least, the Gambians who are the marginalized the most. Work from there, build up, and get to a point where, because the floor is so high, your ceiling is higher. Because there's a way to think about yourself that ends up being better for everyone.
Exactly.
We need to be very. We don't need to be as immediate as we're moving, because I think with government, for example, corruption is very much about what can I have today. The money comes in, you get it, you go. But how about the fact that if you invest the money into industries and areas, your kids are actually getting the best education in the country. They'll be the ones to benefit from the industries that you're going to kickstart. Yeah. That's a way that you can benefit yourself.
As if you look at it that way.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
But that's the difficulty.
How many people are willing to put in that much resources when they can be like, I can just send my kid to the UK or send them to Ghana or send them to another country. I can just pay a fraction of that. And you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Sure.
But with government funds, if you do that, you invest in education here, invest in university, public schooling becomes better. They have access to internet, a computer room. It doesn't even have to be like to the world standard, because we know that we're working with limited resources based on the position our government is in fiscally. If you do that, you won't have to pay the £21,000 minimum to send your kid to the UK every year.
And for some reason, and that's a fact. And for some reason, I feel like, from my own opinion, that's why I feel like that word leadership was sort of like it's like a key word in a way. Because let's say all of these things we're talking about, like even traveling or whatever, like in terms of education and this and that or whatever, like I feel like all of these things were going out to sort of like find outside or envisioning that, like a life or a fantasy life that we deserve or we could have. I feel like that could all be established where we are. Yeah. Like, we're not that big where it's like it's impossible. Like, but then we're small in a way where like we're blessed with that. Just because like, maybe the majority of the population don't speak English, or the majority of the population sort of like weren't exposed to like education. However, what do we have? What can we use? We have the manpower. We have people like can turn nothing into something. We have people that are blessed with common sense, bro. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, we have all of these things. We have all of these tools.
Our greatest resource is human capital.
Exactly. So I feel like this is why when I see in terms of leadership, because in a way because the people that are in that position, whereas they can make a real change, that can sort of like implement all of these, whether it's schools or education, areas where, can educate the people, or teach them, or not education just by sitting in this classroom like every day 9 to 5 or whatever. No, I'm talking about even education from conversation, because just from talking to someone you can teach them something they didn't know, or like, let's say, even listening to like someone else's perspective, or like what they've learned from their own life struggles or their own day-to-day. You're all learning from that as well. So little things like that. And then if the people in the power, in the position, or that are fortunate to have those resources, can also understand that, look, by doing that for the majority is in turn doing it for self. Yeah. Because we're all
the same,
under the same bubble. You get what I'm trying to say? So that's why I feel like, the leadership comes in, and us being Gambian, we all know ourselves, we know our people. Yeah. Gambian, we might all have the same idea right now. I'm telling you, we might all have the same idea, but then in order for us to execute it, that's going to be hard. But then let one person executing us it.
Yeah.
There's like that natural drive in us where like eventually when one person does it or one person initiates it, everyone else like, you know, that's where they get the drive off. So it's like that adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
I was gonna sorry to interrupt you. I was just literally on that point. Is that, you know, with access with government sort of keeping people informed is another aspect, because like you said, when someone's aware of what's possible, they now start building strategies on how they can do it. They now see the possibilities of how they can place themselves in whatever's possible and how they can execute that. And it's similarly, whereas, you know, a lot of people don't even know what industry they can get into, what problems can be solved, because, you know, the thing about business is, or even just being innovative, it's about just identifying problems and coming up with a solution
to make people's lives better.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that we know, that we see around, that are
ideally
solving.
that would be the case, but some people just want to make money.
100% not true say, but believe it or not, this like, because one man, like a wise man once told me, for example, money isn't everything, but without money we're all nothing, bro. Because the fact that we're here, money is part of the reason, because the lights on because of what? Money, bro. Even for us to drink water right now, yes, water is life, water is free, but it's gonna cost. So that's the reality.
Someone would say that's the negative aspect of capitalism. We took a resource that covers 75% of the planet and then we put it in a bottle and sold it to people.
Yeah.
Someone would say that. But like the thing is, regarding like, I think I'm very philosophical in how I think about people and stuff. So I can't go for that one. Because like as human beings, I feel like there's a connection to God. The fact that, you know, if you look at different texts, like wherever it may be, like in the Quran, the angels were meant to bow to human beings because we're like, you know, we were created by God specifically for that purpose of being special, whatever it may be. The Psalm 82 verse 6 from the Bible says, "You are God, sons of the Most High." If you look at so many different texts, there's always that sense of connection to, like, you know, we are enough as we are. The structure that we live in, which is correct, exactly what you said is correct. Like we can't do anything without money. In the world that we live in, we are like, it's very difficult for anyone to survive without money. And it's important that, you know, people have a drive to make money, because there's the survival aspect. You know, from a naturalistic perspective, like, you know, animals will go get meat, like whatever they need to survive. We have to survive, and money is our form of survival.
Exactly. And especially in our society, in like in our lives right now, because let's say 10, 20 years ago or whatever, before like the exchange was money or whatever, like back in the desert time or in the BCs or whatever, they had like another specific trade or whatever they had.
Exchanging stuff.
You know, I mean, maybe life was better in those times, but now in these times where we find ourselves in, as much as like, you know, we have problems or find solutions or whatever, I feel like part of the problem, money is always like part of that. Part of the solution, money is always involved as well. So it's like money also being that medium, it's like it's always a conversation that has to be had, because so that's why I feel like even in terms of like the change, whether we're going for better or for worse, or trying to find issues or whatever, like we also always need to be attentive where thinking about it in terms of how we make more profit or make more money or whatever always has to be included in the conversation, as much as it might be uncomfortable, because it's money. Like, you know, when every time money's attached to something, it makes it just more uncomfortable. However, the reality is it has to be part of the conversation whether we like it or not. So it's just all of these things.
But, you know, but it's a part of the conversation. But I think money is a byproduct of the value you bring. And like if you do something that's needed, in like, for example, we, like I mentioned, we have all these problems, right? We need to educate our youth and our people to think about these problems as things that they can have solutions to. Yeah. Because I think there's so many different sections of the country. There's some people who are very industrious. Some people, they're always figuring out. We know people like that, who whatever you need, whatever they need, they can figure out, they can make it work. And there's some people who are very discouraged because their experiences, whatever it may be, they just ended up in that position where they're just discouraged and dejected about everything. And I feel like that number of people who feel that way would be a lot less if there was a way that, you know, information was spread to people. Because one of the biggest problems in Africa is like access to information in general. A lot of people don't know what's going on. They don't have a high level view of what's going on around them. It's very difficult to think objectively or even close to it, because you can actually try your best to do that when all you see is what's around you. So what they hear about is Manakala Muna analyze Gambia and Bakau's context in Gambia, Gambia's context in the world, you know, the geopolitical structures that are going on, the socio-economic makeup of everything. Naka la ko muna xamé.
Yeah.
So on that end, man legi sama munte contextualize life no. When I guess everything in a higher level, I can't then like approach this problem to some people with a solution-oriented mindset. Very difficult. Some people are industrious, they're like yala mole me or something, and they just do it. But like in general, for just looking at wider society in order to maximize our rate, you need to make sure that people are educated. Yes, formally, it's good that I know how to spell. It's good that I know how to read. Like I can add numbers and all that stuff. But then it's being educated to be able to analyze, to have critical thinking skills. You have to approach information, be able to be like, okay, cool, this is how it fits into that. That's how it fits into that. I could do that. That could help solve that. That will make my life easier. Or will make everyone's life easier, but also I can make money from it because it becomes a business. But it's tough because if your environment lacks something and you're only in that environment, it's very difficult to think that you can go to another area and grab resources that can actually now you can use to solve that problem. You know, because if you and I think that aspect, like with the government, there's a lot of sides where they have to invest in the country from a monetary standpoint. They have to make sure there are ways of people to learn, some sort of entrepreneurship fund that they can get to be able to start their businesses. But also they need to be able to make sure that people are educated in ways that they can interact with the world in a way where they are innovative in their thinking. And we can do that because the thing is we're in a very unique position. Whereas like I can be born in England, I can just go with the status quo, live life on like just going the straight line, exactly the lines that have been paved for me, and I can live a somewhat decent life because the structures it's so structured as a country that you can just go through the set structures and you're cool. But we don't have that privilege here. Like we need innovative ways of getting to where we need to get to. We need ingenuity to be popping up in different areas. We need people to solve problems. We need businesses. We need the private sector to rise up. And also, as well as the government, to create an enabling environment for them to do well. As a result, create jobs, you solve a problem, you do so many different things.
Right.
And we've seen it. Like some kids have built like wind turbines that are producing electricity. In Gambia, I forgot where I saw it, but years ago. You know what I mean? Now, maybe 10 years ago. I was young as well when I saw it. Some kids are building so many different things. Some people are doing arts and crafts. Some people are doing so many different things that are just like, they're adding to something. Because building a country isn't always about, I remember when at the time I was watching something in Gambia. I don't want to say whose name it was, but and it was talking about how like we need lawyers, doctors, this and the other. And yes, we need that. But there's so many aspects of society. The cultural aspect. When you talk about music, we need that industry to thrive. We need children to be able to say that they can go into music. They can, they can make something out of that because music is a marker of culture. It's a part of culture. The concept of even music for us, like now it's rappers, but back in the day, guerrillas. You know what I mean? There's so many different people who kept the history of people through that way, and it builds a sense of community. We're talking about the sabarkats, the significance of that. So many different people, the artists, how some of the artworks that's left is actually like it's a part of how we view our culture.
It's history.
It's history. So all of these aspects need to get fed into, and there needs to be avenues created that people can at least survive on these things.
Right.
Because it's not that everyone needs to be rich. I feel like that's not the necessity. It's just that everyone needs to be able to live and have time to reflect, think, reflect, grow, interact with the world in ways that you want to. Maybe not with complete freedom because that's difficult, but with a level of freedom that it could be. You can be part of that anywhere in the world, and I think that's important. And like you mentioned, like we need to do a lot more. And our leaders need to now, like we need to change the mentality we have going forward in how we like view ourselves. And that's another thing that we need to educate ourselves on, how we view ourselves as people. Because I feel like, I feel like sometimes it's misconstrued when I say we're the smallest country in mainland Africa, this and the other. This is me being objective, that's just a fact. I don't feel like that's how we should feel on the inside, that we're small.
Yeah.
That's just like you mentioned. That's the truth. That's what the numbers say. But then we need to be able to think of ourselves with pride, like in a sense of pride, not ego. Because I think ego is what muddies the waters in a lot of ways. Even when we're talking about like even men and women and all that stuff, our ego gets in the way a lot. A lot of men wouldn't like it if their wife is the breadwinner. that causes problem in the house that, you know, and at the end of the day, that benefits everyone. If you're just being objective, that brings more resources to the house.
True.
But that makes you feel bad because it makes you feel smaller. Yeah. And life shouldn't be about that. How much money I make, how much money you make doesn't really change who we are as people. And I think it's like we need to have that intrinsic value of ourselves as human beings and say that this is we define ourselves by ourselves, not by what's around us.
Right.
You know, things are difficult here. We could develop a lot more. There's so much needs to change, but that doesn't define us as people. Like you said, we possess so many qualities. Facts. And I feel like
it's just a matter of like harnessing it,
cultivating that.
And I feel like because it could be like, let's say, I feel like I just like to look at it like a scout, for example. You know, like a football scout, for example. You can go into a playing field, hundreds of people playing football or whatever. You know, but then like all of them are kicking the ball, doing the same thing. But then you're just attentive, like you're just watching out for, you know, those little things that, you know, once you get them, you can then build. And then you can then build like a kid where, you know, like Messi probably was not always as good as he was. Like, yeah, he has history of being good, but he had to be nurtured to a way. So I feel like it's just that, like the talent is there, the education is there, like the drive is there, the will is there, the passion is there. Like, bro, that's just the natural Gambian. You know what I mean? Like, we have that dembeje, that die hard, that never give up. It's in our spirit, it's in our fire. Do you know what I'm trying to, it's in our like blood sort of thing. But then again, then we always come to a point where if things are not working how you have to work, then, you know, naturally as human beings, we're going to rebel. We're going to be rebellious. And then how, like, there are different ways or different forms of rebellion. Yeah. Some people are, you know, taking out on each other. Some people are sort of like, use all of that as motivation to like make something from themselves. That's all, in my opinion, rebellion in a way as well. Because maybe like you were growing up in a society where you didn't have all of the things you wanted, but then, you know, you had to sort of really crack your mind, like free thinking, like think outside the box in order to make something out of yourself. Yeah. And now you're in a position where, you know, better off than where you came from and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's just things like that, man. But
yeah, I think it's important, man. And genuinely speaking, we have so much potential. And like just on the leadership point, because I feel like this is like something that you and I think even given your background, you understand what it means to like what it means when leadership fails to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. You know, when leadership fails, you know what it means for the people who really feel it in society. Mm-hmm. Because the people who have the resources, they can create their own infrastructure around them. Right. There's people in their house that's running water all the time because they have a tank. They have solar panels. They have electricity all the time. Yeah. There's generators. There's, you know, people have solved certain problems individually. Yeah. But then there's leadership that needs to cultivate a certain culture that fosters
that individuality and be more collective. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because like, let's say, why have just like 1, 2, 3 stars when, you know, we can just like find like a formula of how those people became stars. Use that formula to like sort of like, you know. Yeah.
Like what Tony Cruz said the other day, literally 2 days ago. Right. He said the German squad didn't have any stars. They all played as a part of the collective, and that made them one of the most complete teams. Like as far as like, you know, look at what they did to Brazil. That World Cup, incredible.
Working together.
Yeah, working together. Right. And I think, you know.
Which is a good point. And you know, sometimes they say it's easier to criticize than to actually do something about it. Yeah. And we looked at how much Gambians in the diaspora are sending back home. It's a lot of money they're sending. So, and there's a lot of Gambians outside, and you are contributing you're speaking on something very important, and you're also speaking about something very important. And I think the reason why you're able to share this is because of your experience outside of just being in Gambia. And like you were saying, it's hard to see beyond your environment because that's all you see. So if you're in Bakau, that's all you see. We're in Gambia is all we see. All we see is problems, right? And we don't really see solutions because we're too hungry trying to put something in our... We are in our animal state at all times. We just want to survive, right? So it's really hard to see beyond these needs. And I guess someone like you and you have seen what structure looks like and what actually using taxpayers' money into good use and how that can benefit people, you know, generally. So my question would be like, what are you currently doing? You know, like, what are you doing for Gambia and Gambia just trying to contribute back at home?
At home, I think that's very, that's easy for a lot of us to answer, but because I wouldn't. Okay, so my biggest contribution so far, personally, is that at one time my road was like completely ruined during the night and stuff like that. It was like complete hole in the middle, and the cars had to drive completely on the side, like near a fence, to go around. Middle was completely undrivable, and I think one day I literally just got the urge to just get up and just get a shovel from one of the kids and start digging. And I remember 2 guys that were just sitting there just camping. They came and joined me. And then the rest of the kids came and joined me. We had a wheelbarrow, we had sacks where we filled it up with sand, we put it in the ground, we filled it up with sand, and now the road isn't perfect, don't get me wrong, but it works. Now people can drive in the middle and it doesn't even look like it was done. That was like the only thing, and it's like, that was years ago, that was like 2019, in summer when I was at uni. But like, and I remember like I was at back out because I would like to walk around like at different times. It could be at night, just to compare with the boys, just know what's going on. And because that's the only way I can really understand what's going on in the country. And I was speaking to them, they were like, yeah, definitely same country. No, you're gonna understand. You gonna watch that way, and then you wanna def lolo more. Because I feel like it's about seeing what can be done, because it's very difficult to, like, when you're in a position, you see how something progressively gets worse. You just get to a point where it's just like, you just commit to it. It's gradual commitment. It gets worse. It's still worse. It's gonna get worse after. Let me just let it happen, you know? And for me, coming with fresh eyes, and I wouldn't say I've ever seen how taxpayers' money has been used well, but I'll say that when I come here,
I mean, there's this website. Maybe if you have time, just go on it. It's done. It's by the National Audit Office, right? They audit the government, so they show you all the data where all the monies has been put in, and some monies that were not accounted for. They put everything there. This is like public information, right? So.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Let me link off that.
Exactly.
Very
So
we need to actually sit down and look at that.
It's all there. It's all there. So apparently, taxpayers' money are not being put into good use, because it's not really reflected.
I wouldn't deny that. I know that, like, here we're not using our money well. But I just talking about, like, because someone insinuated that in the UK we're doing that well. But also over there we have our own complaints.
Of course,
just different, you know.
Of course.
And we social housing and stuff like that. But I think that's besides the point.
Yeah.
For me. But so regarding the thing, so that was one of my biggest contributions. But I feel like my other thing is that, like, I talk to people, like, genuinely speaking, with everything I know, I'm very free in sharing it. And just on the side, I do some pro bono consulting work. Like not like I actually deliberately consult, but when someone has a business or they're doing something, I speak to them about it, and whatever ideas I may have, I'll share it with them. I do it around, I've done it with so many different people around, and vice versa as well, because that teaches me about what the business landscape is in Gambia. And I wouldn't say that I'm like doing anyone a favor, because it's a bilateral exchange. And on the side of the diaspora, I think one of the biggest benefits, we have the money is here. One of the biggest benefits is our knowledge, our know-how. The diaspora needs to be exchanging knowledge with Gambians, and Gambians needs to be exchanging knowledge with the diasporans. Because a lot of us, not like you, Stella, because I feel like you have more knowledge about Gambia than I do, but like, because you've stayed here and I'm tapped in. You're tapped in, yeah. Like, you're tapped in different types of people.
I love home.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people who are part of diaspora, who've grown up there their entire lives, there's a certain level, certain nuance in the culture that they're not like as aware of. They're not as tapped in, and that's not a negative thing. They're still a part of the community, because the diaspora is a part of the Gambian community. But I think in order to better foster that relationship between the home-based people and us who are living out, is that we facilitate and encourage knowledge exchange. Not that we're here, yo, shot.
Why not looking at it from like a negative comment, like definitely get a ham or definitely get a little no, but just like you said, encouraging that medium of conversation, whereas it's like, you know, probably like we're behind this though. We probably don't know knowledge of what's on the other side, but you probably like were fortunate to go on the other side and come back. You know, so just like I think it just comes back to the free thinking. Just like be more, you know, open-minded.
Open their eyes, like kind of thing.
Open-minded in a way where, you know, just like be more willing to sort of like just accept information and then, you know, weigh it out. Just don't be sort of like receptive or just be always in defense mode. In a way where having like even when like you're seeing diasporans as like even categorizing us as diasporans, we're all Gambian, bro. You feel me?
No, but that's another aspect I was going to touch on, because also it's not to alienate the diaspora as well. Because I think I've touched on this a lot online in the past, where I would talk about the diaspora and, you know, how we view and interact with this country. And I feel like there's a lot that can be improved. And it's not, I'm not really judging, because there's a lot that can be improved that I could improve specifically.
Yeah.
And I know, and I'm identifying it. Like, one of my biggest regrets of this holiday is that I spent a lot of time sort of being around other people who are here on holiday than I've done, like, compared to like my previous holidays, spending time just tapped into the country.
Yeah, like,
you know? And I feel like that's really important, because with the exchange of knowledge, it just doesn't work one way. Because me going out doesn't mean that I come back with information about Gambia and information about where I come from. Right. You've been staying here. You've seen how the country has progressed. You understand more about the trajectory of the country than I do. The Gambia I left behind and the Gambia I came back to is completely different. Mm-hmm. So you also have knowledge that I don't have. Yeah. And generally, you're looking, the internet exists now. A lot of people are more online. Mm-hmm. We're talking about bank accounts earlier. You know, there's 1 billion people in Africa, 400 million mobile money accounts, and 100 million bank accounts. People are more tapped into the internet than ever. Like, people are interacting with so many things in such a, you know, in innovative ways because of the advent of technology. And I think they are now accessing similar information, a lot of people, that we are accessing just globally, but they're looking at it from a different perspective to us, wherever we may come from. And when it comes to the diaspora connecting, it doesn't just mean diaspora to Gambia, it's diaspora among diaspora. Mm-hmm. I'm from London, you're from Sweden. Mm-hmm. Let's talk.
Facts.
What's your experience of being Gambian there? What's my experience of being Gambian here? Mm-hmm. How can that better allow us to feed that into our country a lot more?
So I guess what we really need from, what Gambia would need from people outside with all this wealth of knowledge is, you guys need to create a community, you know. There should be some kind of a community.
Or like a platform.
Or like a platform.
Yeah, like that's free, freedom of speech sort of thing. Like, exactly. You know, encourage all of these things.
Exactly, because I'm sure a lot of Gambians out there, they are sending money to their family, so they are aware
of what's going on.
Of what's going on here.
Yeah.
And that's not a long-term solution. You can't always be sending money back home.
But also avenues for investment. I talked about a government having an entrepreneurship fund, but with the diaspora sending money back, if you look at, for example, a company that I really like in Gambia is called Innova Global. And with Innova Global, they have a subscription service where us as a diaspora can subscribe and pay for the subscription.
Is it the pharmacy?
Yeah. And that can provide medication to our family with vitamins and whatever their prescriptions are.
They innovate in the game.
Yeah, they innovate in the game. And I really like what Dr. Ismaila Baji is doing. And in the same way that works, where you're just feeding the money directly, we can, some sort of platform where people can identify businesses that they're passionate about in areas. Like, if you're, in your sense, you like music and, you know, fashion and, you know, shoes and all these different things. If you see a nyaukat in Gambia that's, you know, creating new type of clothes you really like, how can I invest in this for a particular stake, let's say? Or just be an angel investor and just invest to see how the business can grow. Have some sort of platform where there are vetted businesses, you know, to be like, okay, how can the diaspora, instead of just, we can send money all the time as well, but how can we invest in Gambia? A lot of people are investing in stocks, they're investing in crypto, but what if we can invest in a way that can actually...
the money's going to be within.
Yeah, and they can encourage, you know, industry. It can encourage young people to come up with ideas, because if you knew that there was a certain amount of money waiting for you if you come up with an idea, whether you want to solve a problem or you just want to make money, you look to solve a problem if the prerequisite is solving a problem.
Right.
And that needs to happen as well. Mm-hmm. So we need to be intentional with how we use our money, because even things like, I know a lot of people invest in treasury bills and stuff like that, and that can provide you with a return that, you know, that's good. But like, we need to diversify our means of investment in our own country, because the government, I know it's easy for us to talk about leadership and stuff, but like, I have so many perspective about what's going on there, because I feel like
we're also a developing country.
Developing
country, So it's
and
like, even the money that we're expecting to see, or like all of these problems we're expecting to get solved.
Yeah.
The development also, like,
can I just correct that quickly? We're not a developing country. We're a least developed country, and that's where it's even more damning. And it's not to paint it in a negative light, because we have opportunities to do a lot of things from this.
When you say least developed, what do you mean?
One of the least developed countries in the world.
Okay.
Yeah, there's developing countries which are like for example, let's say Ghana, which are like actually working, like they're getting loads of foreign direct investment, and you know, they're becoming like a middle income country over time. Whereas then there's the LDCs, least developed countries, which are like some of the countries that are they have such a small population, they don't have as many industries, they're not being as productive. Where if 30% of your GDP is coming from just money that's being sent home, and then how much is coming from aid and other areas, and how much is the tourism industry, the service industry in general. Outside of that, it's like we're not being as productive. And even with the tourism, we're not. There's a different type of tourist that goes to Mallorca or Ibiza than the ones that go to, for example, Monaco.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And in Gambia, we don't get high spending tourists that come here that spend such an amount of money that it's gonna boost our economy in a certain way. So I think
It's not much to show.
Yeah, we need to have context about our government as well. I think the only frustration with people is not that the government is inactive, like it's not solving all the problems like magic. I think nobody expects that. We know where we are.
Yeah.
I think they don't like the fact that our government isn't pushing as hard as they can. From the outside, let's say if they are doing it, let them show us they're doing it. This is why I say access to information.
Sometimes they don't really have to show us. What's going to happen is going to just be evident.
No, it'll be evident, but like I'm saying, if their perspective is that they're trying as best as they can, provide the context for people so that they can see it.
Yeah, for me, because for me, like that's why I just sort of narrowed it down to like the 5 pillars I was talking about. Because let's say if it's the infrastructure, for example, like if let's say you come from the airport from Yundum and you're driving all the way, the fact that like all of the cars are going on the side or whatever, you can see the roads are being made, you can see new buildings being sort of made and stuff like that. So
something is happening.
Something is happening. So in terms of the infrastructure, for example, you can't really say too much. I'm trying to say like it's evident. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Education or whatever, like just like we saw in a way, like you looked at the village, for example. There's certain kids that's like there at certain times on a Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm trying to say, so then we can all agree that from the education perspective, there's a lot of work to be done. Because even like if you look at the balance from like the YX to the international schools or whatever, like there's a lot of imbalances in a way where it's like I'm gonna come. If like if a lot of more attention is like paid into that. Yeah. Because bro, like this is all of these kids or whatever, these are the future leaders of our generation. Like a me or a Barra or like a Taf or a Mohammed Jah, he was once a schoolboy. You know what I mean? He was once going to schools or whatever. So it's like those upbringings, those foundations as well are really important in terms of education. Mm-hmm. Let's say like justice or whatever. Boom. Like with the high rate in crime or whatever and the corruption or whatever and this and that. Let's say if they're like the justice system is like sort of like strict, or we give it more attention in a way where if you do it wrong, you like have to be accounted for or whatever. Yeah. But then there's a lot of like what I mean. We need better forms of accountability.
Accountability. That's a good word.
Yeah. And with me talking about them providing us with context, I'm not saying like when it comes to infrastructure, it's very obvious that it's happening, but the infrastructure money is coming from the OIC. Like for example, the roads that we're talking about. So we're not producing enough money that like we can just solve all our problems. So I'm not saying that like the government is doing the best that they can, but I'm saying that there's
always room for
that frustration as people is that a lot of people don't feel that the government is doing as best as they can. They're actually going the extra mile.
Doing the bare minimum.
Bare minimum.
They have the potential to do so much more.
It feels that way in some regards. Because
that's when we say poking the bear as well. In some way, it's like it's in a way where don't think we're blind or we're dumb. Like we have an idea that there's things can be done, changes can be made, so why are you not making a change? Why do we have to ask? Why do we have to raise our voice before you hear us?
But the thing is as well,
if you hear us, you feel me?
But the thing is as well, there's so many people that work in government that you would meet. It's a small country, you talk to them. Yeah. And a lot of people have great intentions and they go into this position and they're trying to like,
the government is a whole different world. It's a whole different politics that's happening there.
Yeah, so that's
it's almost like what's interesting about our government is, I've had a few gigs for some government agencies, right? So I can't have an inside knowledge on how things are. It's like a reflection of society. If you're in the government, it's like just mini Gambia, right? They have their own sets of problems, their egos and corruptions, and so it's. We understand it's it's hard to get rid of that, right?